Hey there, I'm Mysca, and these are tips and strategies that will hopefully help you win more in Blackout. I'm by no means some sort of pro pretending to be coaching more mediocre players or anything like that. I'm just saying what has helped me get better at the game, so hopefully you can get better too, win more, or just have more fun with the game, or just listen to an interesting video. I don't know, it's up to you. I'm gonna be going through things pretty fast though and try not to ramble, so let's just get started. First up, as sort of a first tip for the start of this video, I just wanted to say that I'm just making these videos for like-minded players that just want to improve and make better use of their time in Blackout, rather than feeling like it's a frustrating time sink. Mindset is super important when trying to get better at games, and sometimes I would almost recommend to find ways to blame yourself and try to discipline yourself to look at your games in an objective way. Anyway, that's kind of a shit tip for a video like this, but I felt like it was needed for the start of this video, as that mindset of being able to criticize yourself and looking at your ways of playing and your decisions in an objective way is super important. I'm getting really unlucky with loot, my shots aren't registering, or the circle is never where I land, are all excuses that players just make for themselves. So if you find yourself saying any of those things regularly, then I would say work on your mindset for improving before you watch a video like this, because I'm just not gonna magically allow you to win more games out of nowhere. Anyway, that's the first tip. I felt like I needed to say that. Second is just playing the circle, and I can't really say this in a better way, there's no better title for this, but I'm just gonna be going through all of these things very fast, so bear with me here. There are many ways to find a strategy around the circle that works for you. Rather than just saying don't be late to the safe zone, I'll give you some examples of this so you can kind of apply this to your own games, hopefully. One overall game strategy in Battle Royale games has been to play high risk, high reward drop locations into center of the circle, meaning that you prioritize dropping a fairly risky spot that you know well, a named location, just a big spot with a lot of loot, something like that, followed by getting great loot and then making your way to the very center of the circle, usually getting over there around the reveal of the second or third zone, something like that. And then you just stay there until the very end and you hold a few different buildings. This essentially secures your good location for the late game, which is arguably one of the most important parts of any Battle Royale game. Another way is to play edges of the circle and using flanks that people won't expect when the circle, or collapse rather, is coming in. A lot of people don't know this, but playing outside the collapse is a lot more viable than most players realize. I wanted to get an example. So here is me with minimum healing at the start here, playing for loot in collapse, and I find 2 Outlander perks, I think, more and more healing over time, and then just end up being able to play the collapse almost until the very end, where it's chunking me for like 10 HP every tick. And that's with the Outlander perk on. So this is generally considered a pretty cowardly and a BM way of playing though. I'm not saying just stay outside the circle the entire game, but it definitely is a viable option when needed. And this, combined with just playing these very outer flanks coming up behind people, can be very difficult to deal with for the enemy. There's loads more stuff you can do with the circle that's very similar to this, and many more concepts of how you should go about them. So knowing these and exploring which ones work well for you can be pretty key. I could talk more about this, but if you guys want that and more examples and stuff like that, I'll probably do a second video since I'm already kind of rambling here. Point is, there's more to the circle than just getting to the safe zone. Third strategy or tip, or whatever you want to call it, more of a PSA honestly, is that early game fighting rarely benefits anyone, so play around this. Just fighting super early doesn't really reward anyone a lot of the time, and this should always be considered when you're trying to play this game properly and working up your win rate and stuff like that. A lot of very good players fall into this way of thinking that kills is just everything, which I can totally respect, but it's fun to go for kills, it's part of the core gameplay of any BR, but at the end of the day, early game fighting is the most RNG heavy part of a match. And even if you win those super early game fights, you probably just used up your resources that you would have used for late game instead or something like that. Just keep this in mind when dropping and playing early in risky locations and things like that. There's nothing wrong with just dropping on some smaller group of houses and solos and duos where there usually is enough loot for at least 1 or 2 players, but in quads you might want to go for bigger loot spots and you might be forced to fight a little bit more early. But just overall, you don't want to take too many early fights. You need some breathing room, you need some resources for later too. Alright, the fourth one is knowing your drop, and I know that this sounds like such a bad tip for a video that's supposed to be more for experienced players and more about tips and strategies and not beginner mistakes. And it's something I mentioned previously too, but there's more to this than just a super basic beginner tip. Obviously it's not great to start the game in a spot you don't know at all. It doesn't take a genius to figure that out, but I think many of you would be surprised about the extent to some Battle Royale players learn their drop locations. Some know all the different loot spawns, angles that they are super unlikely to be spotted from, weird jump spots to quickly climb buildings, just stuff like that. I really enjoy having about 3 drop locations total that I use as my main spots in duos and quads, and definitely recommend this to players that want to try harder to win. For example, the other day, me and the people I were playing with weren't finding much luck a few games in a row with one of our drops. Some communication stuff just was not really working out, and we were not really synced up with our aggression and pushes, so we ended up dying alone when trying to push, and miscommunication happened, all that stuff. Instead of trying to force that spot and getting frustrated with it, we just dropped in one of our other spots that don't require as much early coordination, but that we still knew well, and that we knew we wouldn't have to communicate as much early, and it also made for more mid-range rather than close quarter combat. And as a result of that, we won that game just straight away, and we were able to overcome those issues that we had with that early game fight. We still had to kill another squad straight away, but at least we knew what we were getting ourselves into, and we were a bit more comfortable with it. Recognizing those issues and being able to switch between the different spots that you know that hopefully at least give you different situations to work with doesn't just help the more experienced VR players that are good at aiming and good at fighting, but also just anyone looking to have more fun with the game instead of dying early over and over. I definitely recommend this. Just to kind of sum it up, have a few different spots you drop in, but don't just say, hey, I'm gonna drop this building every time. Know your exact drop, know the different angles you want to take, know the different flanks you want to use. If there are some weird angles that you don't think the enemy will know about, then use those. If you can easily get on top of a high ground or a roof by doing some weird parkour shit, then that's something that that other guy might not know about, so use that against him. Just things like that, super important. Last but not least is a kinda shit tip again that feels obvious when you say it, but honestly it's so important. And it's that it's almost better to make a worse decision fast than a better decision much slower. What I mean by this is that at the end of the day, we're all just people playing this game, right? If you're up against another duo in a kind of 2v2 situation, then them running for a crazy risky flank but doing that early, and you taking a longer time making the decision that maybe you guys should hang back a little bit, watch for flanks, etc., might be the right decision for you to make, but they've made a much riskier, much harder decision much quicker, and because of that still get the advantage. And this happens all the time in Battle Royale games, and I know this is a lot when spectating players that are a bit newer. They kind of hang back and see what people will do and try to kind of react to their own squad and react to the enemy. And playing reactively a lot of the time in a Battle Royale game is just kind of a bad trap that some players get stuck in for a long time, and even experienced Battle Royale players might still do a bit here and there. I definitely still do. And I've played like 1,500 hours of Battle Royale games, if not more. And I'm not saying that it's always wrong. Sometimes reacting to someone else's play and seeing what they will do can be the better play, but then make that decision to react. Don't sit around and allow the enemy to just get control of that whole situation. You want to be in control, you want to dictate the pace, make the decisions. This is one of those mistakes that sometimes I don't even notice that I am making, and you really have to look out for. It's very easy to have this happen, so yeah, just watch out for it. Anyway, those are all my tips that are not really mistakes, but rather tips and strategies for a little bit more experienced players. But again, I'm no pro. I'm just saying what helped me get better and have more fun with the game. If you enjoyed this, then please let me know, and let me know if you want more of anything in particular in here. That's everything though. Thank you very much for watching, and thanks for all the support recently. And yeah, I'll see you next time.